I'm Alistair Gordon. I'm the CEO of a company called Expertunity, and we help subject matter experts unleash their potential. And I'm about to have a great conversation with Prosper on the TheOnline Prosperity Show. I hope you enjoy hearing all about expertship and how subject matter experts can break out of their technical bubbles and make the difference they know they can make.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the TheOnline Prosperity Show, the number one place to get exclusive insights into the journeys, methods, and real-world solutions that are changing the world. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and our mission in every episode is to tackle that nagging problem, which basically ends up becoming a lot of people are knowledge rich but impact poor. And that's exactly what my guest today, Alistair Gordon, helps to solve. Now, Alistair, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for the invite, Prosper. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. There's a lot of people that know a lot of stuff, but they are boldly going nowhere, especially when it comes to impact. And I think that's the one thing that you help people to solve. Now, you might be an expert in your own realm and you've done the work, you know, done the certification, you know just about everything there is to know, but are you being impactful? So, and you might be asking, why Alistair, why now, and why you should care. So Alistair is the founder and CEO of Expertunity. I had to try this out a couple of times before we jumped onto this, because this is a morph of two words, and we're going to jump into what that is exactly and what that means for you. And not only is he a master of blending opportunist words, he's also an author of Master Expert and the Expertship Growth Guide. And he's also a globally recognized coach for subject matter experts, technical specialists who are brilliant at their craft, but often stuck in what he calls the technical bubble. And we're going to be exploring what that is, if we're going to be exploding those bubbles or staying within them. And with thousands of experts that are trained across industry, he actually helps them develop the expert skills, which are stakeholder engagement, influencing, leadership, and the leadership that goes beyond titles and things of that nature. So what this does then is helps them multiply their impact, influence, and they also left fulfilled to be, do, and have a happier existence. Now, this might sound like a lot, but for those that are experts, you do realize that everything that we do matters. And we need to be showing up for those that we want to be impacting. Now, Alistair, I could go on and talk about things I'm not even qualified to talk about. Now, I once heard somewhere that you actually used to joke that a lot of experts mourn about being misunderstood, you know, when the actual problem that they have is they're showing up in the world and expecting either CEOs or randoms just to maybe understand who they are in like 5 minutes. And if they're on TikTok, 5 seconds. Have you ever been maybe kicked out of a meeting for oversimplifying what a lot of people take time to create?
What a great first question, Prosper. Well, I haven't, but I suspect I've been close to being kicked out. I mean, I think the challenge for many of us as professionals is that we we know what we're capable of, and we know what we'd like to be capable of, and we kind of assume that everybody else knows that too. And maybe if we're a generalist or something like that, or we're doing something that's very familiar to the general public, then we know whether someone's good at something or not. But if you're a technical expert, you probably have deep expertise in something that most people don't understand. They won't understand the complexity. They won't understand, as you beautifully described in your introduction, the years of work it took to master some of this expertise. But experts tend to forget the effort that they've made and how specialist they are. And I think they assume that people, know. My perfect example of this is many of your listeners will be working in, either small or medium or large organizations. And every time they open their computer, their email will pop up and their inbox will populate, and it just happens automatically and everything's fine and what have you. But if you talk to anybody who's in charge of corporate email in a large organization, the amount of effort that goes into making sure that those emails just arrive sensibly and the email systems are secure is huge. It requires incredible skills. You have to keep things up to date all the time. Most of the work that email specialist does is completely invisible. We just take it for granted up until the Monday morning when your email doesn't open up and your world ends, and what have you. And then all of a sudden, well, whose responsibility is this? And I think this is one of the challenges for a lot of technical experts. The work they do is super important, but as the general public, we don't understand the complexity or the skills they've required, but they think that we should, and of course we can't.
I like that, because so many times you're absolutely right about the email or even the phone. Even right now we're on Zoom. Who knows what needs to happen in order for this to particularly be possible? But you would have arrived at this sort of juncture after maybe gone through this yourself or things of that nature. Could you maybe give us a brief outline of your journey so far?
Yeah, so I feel like I've come full circle, Prosper. Really, when I started out, I was in publishing, and I ended up setting up a company that published IT magazines, so for IT specialists and IT managers and what have you. So I spent a lot of time with IT folk, and then I went and did a few other things. And then I've ended up being involved in a leadership development company, and I'm sure there's hundreds and thousands of leadership development companies around the world. And I was doing a leadership program one day with some senior leaders, and at the end of the program, the CIO, the Chief Information Officer, the head of IT, in other words, came over to me and he said, "Alistair, this leadership program was great, but I've got a whole floor full of IT specialists who need some of these skills, but they don't know that they need them. Can you help me?" And from that single conversation, which was 9 years ago, we've gradually learned and built this concept called expertship. So obviously leadership is all about teaching people how to lead teams and lead people, but expertship programs and initiatives are all about helping subject matter experts, who are very often individual contributors. How do they deploy their expertise to maximum value? How do they help the organization innovate around their expertise? How do they live really fulfilling, growing lives in terms of their technical? And as you say, a lot of them are stuck in their technical bubble, so we try and help them get out of that by developing a whole bunch of skills on top of their technical skills that are going to help them to be the very top experts that they can be.
Now, Alistair, obviously, coming from the IT sort of space, there's this whole component of garbage in, garbage out. So when obviously these experts, have a different input, they're gonna pull out a wrong sort of output. Are you saying the more people understand what these experts can do for the organization, the more they can actually extrapolate the value from these people. Is that the actual core understanding here?
Yeah, I think that's one side of the coin, Prosper. If I think a lot of senior leaders don't realise how important the work that subject matter experts in their organisation do. I mean, at the end of the day, subject matter experts pretty much keep all the lights on. You know, they keep everybody safe. They do a lot of very important work, and you know, we've gone well past IT now. With, you know, science, finance, you name it, anybody expert. The other side of the coin is that a lot of people come and ask experts to do things. You know, look, I'd like you to design a purple button on the top right-hand corner of this web page, for example. And I think experts occasionally are their own worst enemies, because they won't ask, why do you want, you know, a button on the top right hand corner of the website, and, you know, what are you trying to achieve? They won't really explore what it is that the people asking them to do something really want, because they just take the order and they execute it technically. And then, of course, you know, the person who asked them to do the work, so I didn't want it that big, and I didn't want it this. So I think on the one hand, it would be great if generalists understood just how experts were and how important they are, and paid them, I think, a bit more attention and a bit more respect, and gave them some more recognition. But on the other hand, I think experts have got to be more proactive in really understanding what the people they're supporting really need, and really thinking through how they can best service those. And those skills that I'm talking about are sort of consulting skills, you know, their ability to collaborate with people and explore people's needs. So they're not just technical skills like the coding, they're the interpersonal skills, change skills, those sorts of things. We call them enterprise skills. And they're very often the skills that experts really need to develop on top of their technical skills to be a guru, basically.
You see, there's always this whole conception of, it's not my job. You know, my job here is to put these wires together and make sure that email is delivered, or whatever the expert sort of does. So when you maybe first looked into teaching these enterprise skills to experts, were they ready to say, you know what, I'll put that along with the other list of accolades that I've already achieved, and they wanted more of what you're offering?
So another super question, which is very insightful, because no, they weren't. Absolutely not. As I think you probably were suspecting, we all have our own comfort zones, right? You know, areas where we know we're expert, we know what the right answer is, we know how to do things, and technical experts are no different from everybody else. They like playing in their comfort zone, and they don't like getting outside their comfort zone. So they're not ready to learn enterprise skills. In fact, quite a lot of them believe that, you know, interpersonal skills and things like that, storytelling and being influential, that's not my job. Exactly as you said, you know, that's somebody else's job to do that. Just tell me what you want me to code, or tell me what you want to, you know, build a spreadsheet on, or a pivot table. I'm the expert. I'll do that. I'm not really interested in how that connects into what the rest of the organization is doing. And of course, that's a fatal error, because that's exactly what, you know, means that they get stuck in their own little technical box. They never get invited to all the interesting meetings where people are describing, you know, what we could be doing. They're not seen as strategic. They're seen as super tactical. And as a consequence, you know, they're not deployed doing higher value work that they could be doing and they want to be doing. And the organization would love to see them do, because, you know, people don't think they're interested. So there's a bit of a mindset shift that needs to take place. You know, so we help them explore what frustrates them in their jobs, and what's getting in the way of them unleashing their own potential. And they figure out eventually that, yes, it is other people not respecting them, but they've also got to step across the aisle as well, Prosper. They've got to lean in and make a bit of a difference.
You see, when you call the IT department or maybe the finance department or things like that, there's always that go-to question: did you plug it in or plug it out, or, you know, things like that end up becoming rhetoric, so to say. And half of the time, these experts are always expecting everyday people or maybe generalists to understand them in a short amount of time. Is there some sort of awkward misunderstanding that you've actually witnessed that can bring this across so that these experts can start seeing that what you think is not exactly how it actually comes out on the other end?
Yeah, I think if you take a lot of technical experts, whether they're engineers or scientists or whatever, if they're supporting systems of one description or another, you might be a hydraulic engineer in, I don't know, a water utility, for example, which would be one of our clients we've been working with just lately. They have work to do, but they also have to fix problems all the time. We ring up and say, this isn't working, that isn't working. And probably a high proportion of their work is fixing problems. And, that's fun for the first year, Prosper. There's 26 problems and I've fixed each of those 26 problems 100 times, By the time it gets to year 3 or year 4, fixing the same problems all the time is somewhat discouraging. It's not exactly what we decided we wanted to do with our lives. And an expert might have a really good idea on how to fix this problem so it doesn't reoccur. But if they don't have really good enterprise skills, they probably can't make a good business case. They don't know how to tell a story to the person who's going to fund it. Maybe they can't get the resources or the time off to actually work on the solution. So they just get stuck in this repetitive sort of working pattern where they're just fixing problems all the time. So if you ring up and say, look, my email isn't working, to the email specialist, and the email specialist said, right, well, have you plugged it in? Have you changed your password? Did you put your password in right? And they're sounding a bit bored. We need to remember this is probably the 1,000th time they've had this conversation, in the last 2 years, and they're over it. Do you know what I mean? So, but of course, we want them to start thinking about what are the bigger picture solutions? How do you help your users get better at fixing their own problems? All of these sorts of things you can imagine would be on the agenda. The challenge is that the rest of us think it's the experts' fault, and the experts think it's our fault for breaking their systems. And that's where these sort of occasional tensions that you're describing really well come in.
Is it okay? If you look at innovation and everything else that has come along the way, when I was growing up, let's say my dad would buy a new hi-fi radio or things of that nature. He would take out a whole weekend trying to learn the manual and figure out how everything works, and pressing a button and then going to the radio to see if it actually works and then reading it. But then all of that has sort of been taken away. Now you just plug and play most of these things and things of that nature.
Thank goodness.
Doesn't that sort of take away the need for that communication to then happen, with time, like you say? You create a process, or you make things simpler to use, which then sort of takes away that sort of friction as we go along.
Yeah, well, it should do, and of course, making things plug and play requires great expertise and brilliant design. I think we've seen the advent over the last 20 years of human-centered design, and people really thinking about how people are going to actually use this. They're more capable now of visualizing how someone is going to plug it in and what are they going to plug it into. Whereas, maybe before, the electronic engineers who were dealing with all these things were just trying to produce the best sound or, what have you. And I think when you see some of the sort of mega companies like Apple, for example, have really changed the way we think about design thinking and design and what have you. But every time you plug something that is quite complex in and it's simple to operate, it means an enormous amount of thinking and design and testing has gone into it. And that's obviously what experts do. But your example is a perfect example of where, it must be easy. But it's not. and of course, as soon as we say to the expert, I plugged this in, it's really easy, the expert who designed it is going, it took me 5 years to get it to do that. So there is this issue where we don't, unless we know an expert, we don't really know just how expert they are. The other issue is that if you ask an expert about what they do, they tend to want to, at some length, Prosper, in my experience, describe exactly what it is that they do. And they do so in their own language. It might be Mongolian, Swahili. It certainly isn't plain English. And so they use a lot of jargon. And we get lost and we lose interest in it, and then they lose interest in talking to us, and then off we go again. So I think the opportunity there's about 40 million technical experts in the world. I think that's our calculation, about 40 million. And I think the opportunity for most of those to really improve the way they communicate, explain things, collaborate, have better working relationships with stakeholders, run change programs, better be involved in innovation, as you've just described. All of these things that I've just described are enterprise skills, and up to probably 10 to 15 years in, they focused on building their technical prowess, which will be outstanding. But because they've overinvested in building that technical prowess, they probably underinvested significantly in building these enterprise skills. So what we do is help to restore that balance. And if they're good at enterprise skills and they're technically brilliant, then they can pretty much choose who and where they work, to be honest, because they're so valuable, because they connect brilliantly with the business or the organization or the government department they work with. They're very good with generalists, but they're also brilliant working with technical teams. And so they're the best of both worlds, and that's where I think most experts want to be, and we are working to help them get there.
Absolutely. And talking about things that take a while to bring to life, I mean, I just looked at your book. It looks like it takes 3 to 5 business days to get to me, which is fine, but it didn't take you that less to write it, right? I mean, your books, Master Expert and Expertship Growth, took you years to write. What sort of internal shift did you go through during that process?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting it's a really interesting topic, because it took 3 years to write the thing. But it actually, one of the reasons was we had to rewrite it 3 times. So, we wrote it the first time, and then I shared it with a whole pile of technical experts, and they were, very polite, but basically gave me about 400 pages worth of criticisms and what have you. So we wrote it again. And Master Expert is really a textbook. The best way to describe it is a textbook. It's 50 chapters, it's 700 pages. It's how to be a master expert. It's how to go from being an expert to a master expert. And most of the people who buy the book now and use it on our programs and what have you, they jump into the chapters that matter. If suddenly stakeholder engagement is a real issue for them and they've got, a suboptimal stakeholder relationship, well, there's, 2 chapters that help them figure out how to deal with that. And if they're struggling with change or they're struggling with storytelling, you can jump into it. But it took us a while to get the structure right. And the feedback that we got from experts was fantastic. I'd strongly encourage anyone who is writing a book to get to a very rough first version, which is what we did, and then send it out to some of your mates. And they will, the target audience, and they will give you incredibly good feedback. We made the mistake of trying to finish it and then send it out. And so then we had to rewrite it, and then we had to re-edit it and so on. So it takes a long time, but, it's going to be a long time before I write another book. I'm going to tell you, it was full on.
Well, congratulations! At least you did ship that, because some people would have just put it in the too hard basket and never done anything about it. So
we very nearly did several times.
I can imagine. So in those 50 chapters, you do have a model that you obviously are following through, and like we've been talking about some of the capabilities, the technical relationship and the value domains that really are those enterprise skills. Now, is there any, because like you said, it took you a while to write the book, and then you had to get feedback from other people. But half of the time when we write a book, it's usually writing a book to ourselves. Is there any of those aspects that you maybe struggled with, maybe when you were getting started in your own journey, that you can actually, attest to say, you know what, I think this is actually something that other people want and would actually benefit from?
Yeah, well, one of your podcasts was with Amisha, who's helps publishers publish books, and I highly recommend that episode to anyone who's listening. It was absolutely excellent. One of the things that she said, and I think we discovered we had to figure out early on, was who are we writing it for? Right. Are we writing it for the managers of experts? Are we writing it for ourselves? Are we telling our story? Are we telling the expert story? And so we quickly decided we were writing for experts, and we wanted to write it in a way that they could read a chapter in 10 minutes and immediately get 3 or 4 ideas of things they could do differently that will make this work better. This relationship work better, this change run better, this communication run better, and what have you. So once we had clarity about who we were writing it for, and we're lucky enough to have worked with lots and lots of experts. So we used lots of examples of people that we'd met and the challenges that they'd faced and how they'd overcome them. So from that perspective, it came together once we had a clear view of who we're writing it for and what material we were going to reference. So we've been lucky enough to work with several thousand technical experts over the last few years. So most of that experience of working with technical experts and what their challenges are, I think we understand that pretty well now. And so that was what we were able to put into the book. So if this is your challenge, here are some options for you how you fix it.
So from what you're saying, I mean, obviously, SME coaching is not just generic. You literally have to go in for the right kind of person with the right pain and the right sort of audience. And it's built for technical brain sets. Like you said, when you send it to people, they send you 400 pages, of notes and things like that. So what's one misconception that you think people have about coaching experts that actually maybe gets debunked in the work that you're doing?
Yeah. Look, again, fantastic question. It is quite different, and most people don't think it is. There's a lot of leadership coaching that goes on, or life coaching that goes on. The thing that is interesting with technical experts is that you, as a professional coach, you can't possibly provide them with any real advice because they're always massively more technical than you are. So it's almost pure coaching in the sense that you have to really ask them questions. You have to help them solve the problem by asking questions. The other thing to bear in mind with technical experts is this isn't true of absolutely everybody, but the vast majority of them are incredibly smart. So if you're suggesting anything to them that isn't quite right, they'll challenge it. Most technical experts are very evidence-based. They want to know why that works. Okay, that tactic works, but tell me why it works. They classically want to take it apart and put it back together again. So I think the opportunity to, and maybe the final thing to add is that technical experts have really complicated work arrangements. They're not easy to fit on a typical organizational chart, because one day they'll be doing really high level innovative work. The next they'll be saying, okay, Prosper, have you forgotten your password again, etc. So they'll have this complete group. They'll have someone they report to, their manager, but their manager might not even see 80% of the work they do, because they're doing work for all sorts of different stakeholders around, the organization or what have you. So they're quite independent spirits in lots of ways, and they have very complicated working arrangements where people are asked they're asked to do far more than they actually have time to do, which again puts them under pressure. So I think you have to understand all of that around being a technical expert in order to properly coach them. But I can share with you, Prosper, that some of our most successful coaches in our system weren't coaches when we first met them. They were technical experts who got done very well and were retiring, and we taught them how to coach because we found their expertise, their understanding of what it was like to be an expert was absolutely critical to their success in terms of coaching. Whereas we had some coaches who have been leadership coaches for a very long time, but were not very good at coaching the technical experts because they didn't understand the environment they operated in. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Because you could be a coach, maybe used to coaching civilians, but you wouldn't understand the brain work, around how, technical experts think. Like you say, they probably, evidence-based. You might just start talking about woo-hoo stuff and they'll be like, please show us where this has worked before and things like that. But one might also pose it a question and say, with the advent of technology and the way things have sort of started transpiring, especially in the last couple of years, why is it important now to develop these skills when maybe you could speak into a speaker and get an answer for it, or you could type into some sort of, interface and, it spits out that, enterprise skill that you're after?
Yeah, well, I mean, we are in the process of developing an AI bot to be sort of like a first level coach. Obviously, when you type something into an AI engine, the first thing I should say about AI is that most technical experts I know really excited about AI being deployed because it'll get rid of all the grunt work that they do, all of those basic questions that they keep having to answer 1,000 times a year. The bot, the AI will generally do that. But when it comes to developing human beings, and particularly developing subject matter experts, each subject matter expert, the work that they do, the organization they work with, their specialist knowledge, it's very contextual. So it's, you have to understand the context in which they're operating in order to find the right solution. If you go into an AI bot, it'll give you a whole list, a smorgasbord of things you could do, but it won't be contextual. It'll be by nature generalist. So I think, for easy problems, easy solves, AI is going to make life a great deal easier for all of us. It probably already is for many of your listeners. But when it comes to the deeper technical challenges, then you'll still require that expertise. And as I say, I'm hoping it'll mean that our technical experts around the world have much more time to work on, those bigger issues and those lasting technical changes that will improve the world, which is what your podcast is about. I'm hoping it will give them more time to do that because it will free them up from the grunt work.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, if you're a technical expert that's listening right now, I want you to drop in the comments at least one enterprise skill that you feel you are less confident about, and I think Alistair and his team will be able to pull you up on that, or maybe give you tips into how you can be to and have that skill for yourself. Now, Alistair, obviously, maybe for some businesses out there, they usually touch up on the more visible things within the business, the visible levers. They're the ones that they want to sort of fix. Now, why focus on maybe SMEs when leadership development is where the real budget really is? If you really look at how other people look and consider their business, and how do you maybe prove that maybe if you fund these experts, it actually levels up the business and produces some sort of ROI, that the business likes?
Well, it's a challenge to start off with, because everybody understands what leadership is and people leadership is, and everybody has a good sense of what a leadership program does. Most of the senior leaders in most organizations are because they understand what leadership programs are and they've been on them, they're prepared to fund them and what have you. But most of the senior leaders, who are more generalists, haven't been a technical expert, don't understand the work that technical experts do. So there, generally speaking, isn't funding for them. If you remember my earlier story, Prosper, it was the CIO who asked me to solve the problem. And very often, if we talk to the head of a technical department, like legal counsel or, head of accounting or head of engineering, head of software development, these leaders can instantly see they've got experts in their team who could add way more value if they had these enterprise skills. They understand the challenge, and so part and parcel of what we're doing is, and you're helping by showing interest in our topic. Thank you so much. Is getting the word out there that developing SMEs really has a big payoff. I mean, I tend to ask, if I'm in front of a CEO of a company, I would ask them, what systems have you used in the last week, in your company? And I'd point out that every single one of those systems is supported by a team of technical experts. I'd ask them, what are the 3 new products or services that have been developed in the last year? Who is involved in developing them? Oh, who it would be? Technical subject matter experts. It will be, who has the clearest idea of what customers are going to need, down the line and be able to build for them. It'll be technical experts. So if you look in most large organizations, the technical experts are at the center of innovation, and they're also at the center of keeping the lights on and making sure all these systems work properly. So I think they deserve to be invested in, and that's part of our mission, is to get more organizations, and we're winning slowly, but we're winning, get more organizations to invest in developing subject matter experts as well as people leaders. We're not saying it should be either or, it should be both.
Absolutely. And obviously when you're with the CEO and maybe he's doing that management by walking through the floor, how can he spot that this technical expert might be ripe for some sort of education? I mean, what's some sort of indicator, that an expert is now ready for mastering expertship?
Yeah, so if the CEO, he or she, are wandering around, they'll probably have to go down to the basement to find the real technical experts, because they're generally hidden away. Most CEOs will go and talk to the customer service people or the sales people or something like that. They won't go and talk to the IT department. But the question you're asking is really interesting, because when the talent teams in organizations are looking for who's going to go, who's high potential, who's going to be really good at being on a leadership development program or high potential. They'll look for people who are very energetic, they're very extrovert, they're very good at communication already, they're very ambitious, they want to be promoted, they're putting their hands up. So they're pretty easy to spot, these high potential leaders. Almost the opposite is true in a high potential expert. So the expert is perceived as not being ambitious because they don't want to be a people leader. They want to be a better expert. So they don't want a promotion. And they're probably introverted. 80 to 85% of experts are quite introverted. They won't be putting their hand up because they're too busy. And instead of being enthusiastic and energetic, they'll probably be exhausted, because they've been doing the same thing for a period of time and they're stuck in this technical bubble. So we work quite closely with our clients to help them identify the people who have the most potential to be an even better expert. And very often it will be people who are a bit stuck and a bit disillusioned. Prosper, they might even be a bit grumpy, and if they're very grumpy, in my experience, the grumpier they are, it's because they know they could add way more value, but they're not being allowed to. And that's their frustration. And that for me is a green flag, not a red flag. It's a green flag. Say, spend some time helping this person with enterprise skills and you will absolutely get a massive return on investment as a consequence.
It's like a catch-22, right? I mean, they're obviously frustrated because nobody's listening to them, but they also can't say the one thing that they need. So maybe, obviously, like you said, you've coached thousands of experts globally. You've, worked with governments, private sector, and things of that nature. Could you maybe tell us about a client, maybe some sort of example that you can give us, somebody who, or a team that went through your mastering expertship program and obviously had a transformational outcome. What is the one thing that they discovered specifically within their particular team there?
Yeah, so what a great question. So I can think of several examples, and better not mention any of them because I don't have permission. But if we take an industry like space tech in the UK, for example, which I've just recently worked with, so they're a team of 13 or 14 very technical people. Even in the same room, Prosper, where we ran this program, there were lots of different technical expertises, and those expertises didn't talk to one another and didn't understand one another, and so we ran a program and what have you. The number one outcome, I think, was that they all realized they needed to look outside their organization and their team for inspiration about what they should do. They had to, a lot of them are head down doing their work. They're really busy, so they're just going, no, just go away, let me get on with stuff. When actually what they need to be doing is taking a look at saying, this thing that I'm building, who might find it useful? Who might get value from it? Which sort of partners do we want to work with in order for us to really learn new stuff and provide even better new value? So I think you see this with most really innovative companies. They might end up with, a piece of technology that you and I use, but they've really looked at how people use things and how, where people are wasting time and where people would like to generate time. So they've really thought hard about how to add extra value to customers or citizens or what have you. And that means they have to have a very external focus, and then they can bring back that and say, now we know what to build. Whereas a lot of experts spend some time building things, hoping that it's going to be useful to someone. That doesn't work in today's world. You have to figure out whatever you're going to develop has got to be useful and easy to use, as you mentioned earlier on. So I think that external focus is critical, and that's usually for most of our programs, whether it's a water utility, software company, financial services, health, you name it. It's what are the trends that are coming down the line, and how can I start building great products and services with my technical expertise, so that when customers suddenly realize they've got a need, bang, we've already built it for them.
See, Alistair, while you were talking, I actually made a realization that that's why we've got noise cancelling headphones, right? It's these technical experts, they don't want to be bothered. They have developed their own way of excluding themselves from everybody else and their noise. No, but some of these things are not a one and done thing. You know what I mean? Like, let's say somebody comes in, they get coached and things like that. There's going to need maybe continuous learning and maybe upskilling and things of that nature. Is there something that you've built that people can jump onto, or is it people have to read the 50 chapters of the book? And
yes, so look, there's our website is www.expertship.com, and you can go to that website, and there's lots of chapters of the book on there for free, and there's lots of, so you don't have to spend a penny or a dollar. You can just go and get started. There's a free assessment, so you can go in and do an assessment, and it'll tell you which bits you need to work on most, and it'll direct you to the right chapters and articles on how you can do so. So for anybody who's an individual expert who's listening to this podcast, they can simply start. They can go and start. Obviously, they can buy the books. The master expert will tell them how to do it, and the Expertship Growth Guide is like a development planning tool. So they're available and they don't cost very much. And then there's programs and then coaching and all sorts of other things that they can do. But I might say, Prosper, that as much as, we would love them to come on our programs, that would be awesome. They don't need to. Most technical experts are unbelievably smart, and the stuff that we are suggesting, the skills that they learn and deploy, are a lot easier to learn and deploy than the technical skills they built. It's just that they haven't felt the need to develop them. So I'd really encourage your listeners to, or indeed any of your listeners who know a technical expert who they think is stuck, to just go in and explore and start. Think about what's the thing that frustrates me most. There's a way that they can take a look at some of the indexes and what have you to see what those challenges are, and make a start. Most of the technical experts that we work with are, once they realize they could be more expert, they attack it with military precision, Prosper. They really lean in and get on with it, because they all want to be the best expert they possibly can be. They want to add the most value. And as you said in your introduction to, this podcast, they're keen to make the world a better place. And they've got ideas about how to do it. They just need to build the skills to be able to get the funding and the resources and the attention of senior leaders so they can do it.
Absolutely. So I will definitely put, because you have already alluded to your website, so I'll put those links in the show notes so that people can actually make their way and also make an informed decision whether this is the right path for them. Now, Alistair, I've been in Australia for 13 years now, and there's a couple of statements that really rub me off the wrong way, especially here, in Australia. One of them is, should be all right, mate. Where everybody thinks it will always figure itself out without exerting any pressure or any effort on themselves. What sort of advice would you give to that expert who has bought those noise cancelling headphones and put in plugins in there just so that he doesn't get bothered and is thinking that their technical skills are enough and they don't need anything else other than the credentials that they already have?
Yeah, so, it's an interesting phrase, isn't it? She'll be right. I would say that most technical experts I know think exactly the opposite. They almost automatically think whatever could go wrong probably will, even though we've tested this product or service really well, the users will find some way to break it that we haven't imagined, and we'll have to fix it. So I suspect most technical experts that I know, no doubt a few of them will listen to this and then email me to say whether they think I'm right or not, but they'll say, instead of she'll be right, it'll be she'll be wrong, or she'll be broken. The person that you're describing with the headphones who just head down, doing their technical work, staying in their technical bubble, I suspect that every one of them is frustrated at some level because they know they could add more value and they believe that management is not letting them. And my message to them is, it's not management. You're making a contribution to not making that contribution. So you have to be better at explaining what you do. You have to be better at explaining value. You have to be able to connect the money and the resources that you need to do exciting work to organizational strategy or citizen strategy. The things that are getting in the way are not management. They're you, and you can fix them in 3 months, and you'll never look back. And you're smart enough to get this stuff done, really quickly. So one of the things I've really noticed working with experts is they are so quick at making changes. Once they've decided they want to, they just get on with it, Prosper. It's very fulfilling to see how well they can and quickly they can change.
Absolutely. Because their brain is, if this, then that, they always want to fix things, and that's pretty much why they're there. But absolutely. Obviously you've explained to us where you've been, where you're at, but what's next? What are you working on now that you've brought us into your world, at least that we can be excited about? Well,
you're helping with what's next, which is that, we're a small company. We have, 80 or 90 clients around the world, and we're helping I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000 experts a year, but we want to, there's 40 million out there. So we want to make sure that people know that there are free resources available for them to use. We're building a group of partners around the world who'll be able to deliver programs in their own countries, so to make it much more accessible and stop me having to travel all over the place. And so we're trying to take it global, and people who are like yourself, who are good enough to take an interest in what we do, have a really valuable role to play in that. So I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. I mean, it's not every day you get to, experience what it is that you guys are creating. It's quite a unique sort of space, and I hope those, technical experts getting heed of this message. Now, Alistair, I can't thank you enough for the time that we've spent on the call today. I mean, it's been quite an incredible journey and such powerful and also actionable insights. I mean, all the things that we spoke about today, if somebody really is that technical expert or a leader of experts, can actually take heed. And for those that are watching and listening right now, if you've ever felt stuck being that brilliant technical expert, maybe you were being held back by those invisible barriers, I think you know that there's an actual path out there. You need to start by developing those enterprise skills with, with the help of people like Alistair out there. And also, if you check out Expertunity and its flagship Mastering Expertship program, that has actually been described by its participants and their managers as the M.E.D.I.A for experts, I think that's the right path to go. Now, Alistair, thank you so much for helping us bring this out to the world.
Absolutely, my pleasure, Prosper. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are watching right now, just stick around, because in the next episode, we're also going to be exploring more ideas and tools for you to be able to live a happier and more purpose-driven life. And if this episode actually helped you, please share it with an expert, or somebody who's a technical expert that is feeling stuck, or somebody who actually leads experts and wants to help them thrive. I think this is the message that they wanted to hear. I can't wait to see what you will do with this information, and I will put all those links in the show notes below. Until next time, bye for now.